Good evening. My name is Mike Haney, and welcome to another edition of 60 Minutes in Black America. And I tell you, you don't want to miss this edition. If you've always had aspirations to write a book or always wondered how to bring out the best in you, and as we go into a new year with those New Year's resolutions, you don't want to miss Dr. Will. We'll be right back. Good evening and welcome back. Again, my name is Mike Haney, and I really appreciate each of you being there. If you're watching us on Facebook, please like us. If you're watching us on YouTube, please subscribe to our channel and go up and look at some of the other video informational help videos that we have done over the course of the past almost 2 years, consecutive 2 years of bringing 60 Minutes in Black America to you. For those of you that tuned in last week, I'd like to thank Dr. Keith Motley again, the former chancellor of the University of Massachusetts, Boston, for that awesome, inspiring show, as well as the guests last week that joined us to help celebrate his life and legacy as well. Also, hopefully you all have had a very safe and joyous holiday season or beginning of the season with Thanksgiving this past week. I know that I did. And as you see, we've begun to trim the tree and trim out the house as we get excited about a holiday season that encompasses Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, Christmas. So let us begin to share in the joy. Hopefully we're joyous all the time. And at least I know that you'll be joyous after today's show, because we have an outstanding guest from Phoenix, Arizona, Dr. Will Moreland, who has written over 50 books. How do you write 50 books? And some of us have been trying to write one. Well, if you have been, Dr. Will's going to tell you how you get the discipline to tell your story in a book. In addition to that, we all have genius capacity within us. And what does that mean? How's it translate in business? How's it translate in life? How's it translate in marriage? How does it translate across a multitude of fronts? So as you go into this holiday season, coming out of it with, as we all do, making New Year's resolution, listen to Dr. Will, who's figured it out and has had a life in which he has purposely attempted to get people to realize the best in them. So let's bring Dr. Will into the stream and welcome him. Give him a 60 Minutes in Black America. Welcome, Dr. Will. I am so glad to see you. Thank you so much for being here with us this evening.
Mike, I am privileged to be here, man. So excited. I've been looking forward to our time together. So I just want to thank you first for doing all that you're doing to connect so many wonderful people together. Share us with your platform, share us with your audience, and allow us to just share what we believe our gift and our time and our talents are. So, man, I thank you, and I'm super excited to be here.
Well, I am super excited as well. As I told you in our little pre-production meeting, I'm going to let you drive this vehicle today because, you know, I never considered myself genius until I read your book about that and read how to get there. And I want to share this with our viewers. And then the perspective of the apple. So before we get started, Dr. Will, I want to play a 51-second tape for our viewers of you explaining the apple. Can we play that tape?
Quick question for you. What do you see? Let me ask this side. What do you see? Somebody said nutrition. What do you see? What do you see? Most of you said an apple. And for most people, I call that surface. And most people live their life on the surface, never going deep to who they really are. When I look at this, I see apple pie. I see applesauce. I see apple juice. I see candied apple. I see a multiplicity of streams of income. But if you don't go deep, if you don't get to your core, you'll only see an apple. And so when
Wow, that's powerful, Dr. Will. That's powerful. As many apples as I've eaten, as many oranges as I've eaten, to look at it from a different perspective and to look in the mirror at me from a different perspective, to go deep into me to see what my potential is what I'm excited to talk to you about today and share you with our viewers. But let's remember Dr. Leroy McKenzie in the state of Maryland, who's done a surmountable amount of stuff, motivating people as well, who introduced you to me. So I want to give a shout out to Dr. McKenzie. Dr. McKenzie, thank you for allowing us to share in this wonderful human being today, Dr. Will. So Dr. Will, let's start off with your life a little bit, man. I want to talk about, you growing up in Compton, California. We all have heard of Compton. And I think if we, the NW group or whatever, some of the rap groups have come out of Compton, and Compton is, had its, issues as a city, as well as many cities across the United States that identify with communities like us. And then you had this up there that said gangbanger to world changer. Tell us what that meant, and tell us about your upbringing in Compton, California.
Yeah, so I always say Compton, growing up in Compton was like a tale of two cities, right? It was the worst of times and it was the best of times. I was raised by my grandmother and raised by my single mother. So although we didn't have all the monetary things in life or all the glitz and glamour, what I did have was a strong foundation in God, a strong foundation in faith, a strong foundation in giving and service. And so my grandmother was very intentional about teaching all of her grandchildren and teaching her children about how important service was and how important giving back to the community was. And so our home in Compton, even though we came from meager beginnings, our home was always filled with individuals, whether that was my grandmother taking people in to stay with us or us having community meetings at my home. I remember, and this is going to date me a little bit, but I remember, I don't know if you know, when you used to vote at people's houses, right? You can go, and some houses in the community was set up as the voting place. And so my house was one of those places where individuals from the community would come in and vote. And so we always had politicians at the house, Maxine Waters and Mayor Tucker and just all these luminaries in Compton were always at my grandmother's house because she was engaged in giving back to the community. And so that's how my upbringing was inside the house. We were always, always at church. But then on the flip side of that, when I was outside the house in Compton, I'm surrounded by gangbangers. I'm surrounded by drugs. I'm surrounded by a community that they call literally the worst city in America. And so being a young, impressionable kid, being in that environment, I succumbed to that environment, found myself getting in trouble, found myself on the wrong side of the law. And then when I was 18 years old, I find myself in a California courtroom down in Long Beach, California, and I'm getting ready to get sentenced to jail. And the judge looked at me and he says, "Mr. Moreland, you're 18 now. If I sentenced you right now, this record would follow you for the rest of your life. This record will follow you for the rest of your life. What I'm going to do for you, young man, is I'm going to allow you to leave my courtroom, and I want you to come back to my courtroom in 2 weeks and tell me what you're going to do with your life. Tell me, why shouldn't I put you in one of our nice facilities, AKA jail?" And so I left that courtroom not knowing what I was going to do, not having any direction in life. And about 2 days before it was time for me to go back to court, I was walking in the mall, and a gentleman by the name of Corey Oliver walked up to me. And Corey walked up to me and he said, "Excuse me, have you ever thought about going to the Army?" And I looked at Corey, and in that moment, I knew that in that moment, that was my opportunity. I didn't fully understand that moment, but I knew that in 2 days, if I went into that courtroom and told the judge I was going to go to the Army, he wouldn't send me to jail. And so I looked at Corey and I said, "Come on, man, let's go." And he looked at me, and a couple of days later, after this encounter, he looked at me, he said, "Man, I've been walking this mall for 2 years and I haven't put anybody in the military, because individuals where I come from, we weren't prone to going to the Army." So when I told Corey I was ready to go, he looked at me and he was a little stunned. And I remember him calling his station commander saying, "Hey, I think I got somebody." And I heard the station commander over the phone say, "Well, bring him down, dummy." And so long story short, we go to the recruiting station and I sign up. I sign up to join the Army. 2 days later, we're back in court. Corey comes with me. He acknowledges to the judge that I had signed up, and the judge told me, he says, "Mr. Moreland, I think you're making a real good decision for your life." And I want to put a pin here, because if you're ever going to transform your life, and if you're ever going to take your life to the next level, it starts with the choices you make. Whether you realize those choices or not, everything that we're doing is a choice, and it comes with a consequence.
Amen.
And if you
Amen.
can and if you can get in a rhythm of making better choices in your life, then you'll have a better life. And so that's a long story short of how I was able to get out of, being in California, being in gangs, being involved in drugs, being involved in that type of lifestyle. I got an opportunity, and
Wow.
I joined the military, and as they say, the rest is history.
Well, I want to talk about that a little bit more, but I want to acknowledge some people. We rarely acknowledge people on this platform because, the beauty of this platform is that we try to touch communities all over the country. Oakland, now we're in Phoenix, and Miami, Chicago, Boston, New York, Baltimore, Atlanta, all over the country. And so Joe Delgado is out there in Phoenix with you. And I don't know if you know Joe, he's the Secretary of State for the governor, or the secretary of, he's works for the Secretary of State's office, and is Arizona's African American Affairs Commissioner. And I knew him when he was in Boston, and I know he saw Dr. Keith Motley's show last week. But Joe Delgado, we got Carmisha Williams, who's a hotel general manager, Shante Daniels, Quandra Gaines. Just want to say hi to you all, and especially Coach Delgado. When I knew him, when I was 18 years old, and I suffered from knuckleheadism, which it sounds like we all go through. But how do we uplift ourselves? Even some of us today is what the conversation we'll have with you. At any age, it makes no difference. We can change and transform our lives wherever we are. And so that Army move, or that military move, was transformational for you, Dr. Will, because it instilled discipline or gave you an opportunity to see the world, so to say.
Yeah, so let me say this and acknowledge Joe as well. I do know Joe. As a matter of fact, we just had lunch about 2 or 3 weeks ago. He's a phenomenal gentleman, as you know, doing amazing work out here in Phoenix, Arizona. So I do know Joe. He's an amazing guy. So yeah, to that point, when I joined the military began to be the platform for me of transformation, because up until this time, I hadn't gone more than 20 miles outside of Compton, California. So I grew up in really literally a box, right? I've never been on a plane. I had never left the state of California. So I was really in this little box. And so when I joined the military, it was the first time I get on an airplane. It's the first time I go to another state. It's the first time I'm literally meeting people from all around the United States, right? It's the first time I'm meeting people from around the United States. And so I was really sheltered growing up. But when I joined the military, it gave me the opportunity to get out of California, to see the world. My first duty station was Germany. And so now, not only within a short amount of time, within 6 months, the first 19 years of my life, I don't travel more than 20 miles outside of Compton. And now here I am in less than 3 months time, 4 months time, I'm traveling 8,000 miles away from Compton, California. But let me share something with your audience. I was 8,000 miles away physically, but mentally, I was still in Compton, California.
Wow, that's powerful.
Physically. And why this is important is because when I got to my first duty station, I almost got kicked out of the Army because the way I knew to handle situations was the way I handled it in Compton. And so when people would come to me and I was in the club and you know, when you put people together, there's friction and things like that. I was handling things as if I was still in Compton, even though I was in a new environment, even though I was in a brand new country, I was handling things like I was still in Compton. And so I end up getting into a fight. I end up hurting this guy really bad. The military wants to put me out. And I then meet who I call my second disruptor. Corey Oliver was my first disruptor. And then I met a gentleman.
So you mentioned a disruptions, and I want you to go into a little bit of depth in terms of disruptor, because that's the first term that I've heard you mention today that I have no association. So what's a disruptor?
So all of us have these habits that we have, whether we're conscious of them or not. We have a language that we speak. We have a recording that's going on in our minds right now. And so if you were like me, coming from a single parent home, if you were like me and they said you were a kid at risk, if you were like me and people told you you were going to die before you were 18 or you're going to end up in jail, you have to have somebody to come and disrupt that pattern of thinking. Because if not, you continuously repeat that to yourself. So I would say a phrase like this, Mike: I don't have anything to live for. I don't have anything to live for. So because I didn't think I had anything to live for, my actions were as such. So when I was out there gangbanging and I was out there on the streets, I didn't have any regard for my life and I didn't have any regard for anybody else's life because I didn't have anything to live for. And the Bible says a person without vision will perish. And so that's exactly what I was doing. I was perishing slowly because I didn't have a vision. And so until Corey came to me and said, hey, do you want to join the Army? I had no one to disrupt my pattern of going to the park every day and hanging out with my homeboys, going to hang out on the block. I had somebody to come and disrupt that. And so now when I get into the military, I have a gentleman by the name of Command Sergeant Major Babs, and he says, listen, Moreland, they want me to kick you out. But if I kick you out, I read your record. Where are you going? You're going to go right back to Compton. And if you go back to Compton, what's going to happen with your life? What's going to happen with your life? And he says, this is what I'm going to do for you. Instead of kick you out, I'm going to allow you to come work personally with me. And so in essence, and I didn't know all of this terminology like I know now, but he became my first mentor. He became my mentor when I didn't know what mentorship was. And Command Sergeant Major Babs, he asked me the question, Mike, that literally transformed my life. He says, Moreland, where do you see yourself in 5 years? Where do you see yourself in 5 years? No one had ever asked me that question before. Everybody had always told me I wasn't going to make it to 18. And if I did make it to 18, I'll probably be in jail. And they were right, because faith comes by hearing. And so everything they were telling me, I was believing it. And because I had nothing to live for, I believed them.
Did you say that faith comes by hearing? Is that the expression you use? Did I hear that correctly?
Faith comes by hearing. And this is either positive or negative. What you repeatedly hear is what you would repeatedly believe, whether it's positive or negative. And so now this recording had been disrupted now. He's now telling me you're not going to die at 18. You're not going to end up in jail. You have a choice about your future. Your past doesn't have to be a prison. Your past can be a platform and a pathway to your future. And he told me, he says, so what are you going to do? Are you going to use this opportunity that you have now to be in the United States Army to change your life? Or are you going to throw it away and go back to the prison of your mind? And so he says, I want you to leave my office. And this weekend, I want you to think about where you want to be in 5 years. So I come back to him on Monday. He says, what did you think about? What did you come up with? And I had two things that I told him. I said, well, the first thing is I want to be the best soldier that I can be. The second thing is I want to get back into school. I want to get into college. He says, I can help you with those two things. If you're serious and if you're committed, I can help you with those two things. He connected me with another gentleman by the name of Sergeant Sane. And he says, Sane, I want you to mentor Moreland and turn him into one of the best soldiers in this battalion. And then he says, I want you to go and get him enrolled in college. And they did those two things. And when I got into college and when I began to get this mentorship in college, a lady came up to me when I was in a speech class and she says, you have something. Now, all of this, Mike, is working to change the recording in my mind. It's all working. This lady now comes up to me and says, you got something. And she shares a book with me. And the name of that book was Think and Grow Rich, A Black Choice. Now, we're all familiar with Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich, but this particular book was written by Dr. Dennis Kimbrough, Think and Grow Rich, A Black Choice. And in that book she wrote, she says, the amazing thing about this book is that you can read it over and over and over again. Now, at the time, I wasn't an avid reader. I couldn't remember reading outside of high school, but this was the first book I can remember reading in entirety after I got out of high school. And when I read that book, it led me to another book entitled, Why Should White Guys Have All the Fun? By Reginald F. Lewis. And when
Reginald F. Lewis from Beatrice Foods that owns Beatrice, I believe, the food conglomerate from Baltimore. We have a museum named after him in Baltimore. That Reginald F. Lewis?
That Reginald F. Lewis.
Wow, a lot of connections here, man. A lot of connection. And give us the title of that book again.
Why Should White Guys Have All the Fun?
Wow. Why should they? Tell us why they shouldn't.
And so in this book, Reginald F. Lewis came from the inner city. He looked like me. He had similar circumstances as me. But the difference was that he showed me that I didn't have before. Up until this time, anybody that I saw successful that was African-American, they had done it through sports. They had done it through entertainment. In my world, I didn't know about the John H. Johnsons. I didn't know about the Earl Graves. I didn't know about Reginald F. Lewis. I didn't know at that time that you could use your mind, you could use your brain, and you can be in the business arena like Reginald F. Lewis. And so now, Mike, I now had a blueprint, and I took that book, and that book became my Bible. Literally, I saw in there where he had his schedule, where he woke up early in the morning and he would wake up and read and he would do this and do that. I began to model my life after Reginald F. Lewis because now I had a picture. And you know the saying, seeing is believing. I now saw someone who looked like me, that came from similar circumstances as I did. And I said, wait a minute, if he did it, I could do it. If he was successful, I could be successful. And that's what went on in his life. He realized when he became a lawyer and he was doing all these deals, all these acquisitions and mergers for these other gentlemen and for these other companies, he realized he could do it for himself. He was saying, why am I writing up the paperwork for their $1 million deal and their $1 billion deal? I could do this for myself. And so he went into acquisitions and went into mergers and started his own company. And that's how it led him to becoming the first African-American man to purchase a $1 billion company. And it motivated me to all outdoors. I now had an image. I now had a model that I could follow. And I've read that book literally 30 times over the years to find inspiration and to find motivation. And so I started reading all these books. That book led to another book. And then I looked up, my 5 or so years had passed by. I had read over 600 books on personal development, all the books you can think about, The Magic of Thinking Big, Acres of Diamond, The Richest Man in Babylon, Secrets of Success, any of those professional development books you can think about. I began to listen to Les Brown, listen to Zig Ziglar, listen to Jim Rohn, listen to Lisa Nichols, listen to Tony Robbins, listen to Dennis Waitley, all these people in this arena. And I began to see how my mind was beginning to transform. I was beginning to see the world totally different. I was beginning to see myself totally different. I was beginning to see myself not at risk, but at advantage. I now understood
that is something that you have the capacity to do for people today, because given 600 books in that period of time, and for many of us, because I wanted to talk a bit about our young people and their need for mentorship and disruptors as well, because we have a lot of older people that watch it, that's part of our viewership. And how do we create disruptors for our young people in society today, in these cities that we live in, where we have the Comptons, the Mobiles, the Chicagos, where we need disruption, disruptive action? Is the military the only way, or are there other ways for us as parents, grandparents, educators to disrupt and to play disruptors and mentors in young people's lives from your perspective?
That's a great question. So I believe in the principle, each one, teach one. And so if you're listening to me today, and you're listening to this program, I want to challenge each of you to just look in your own backyard, look in your own environment. There's a niece, there's a nephew, there's somebody in your community that you see walking past your house. There's a young man that you maybe see working at the grocery store or at the mall. My challenge for you is to reach back, because just like I had to be disrupted, that's what they need. They need to be told that they can be anything that they want to be if they're willing to work toward it, that they can aspire to be anything that they want to be if they're willing to be committed. And so a lot of times, Mike, what we do, especially inside of our community, we're waiting for the masses to come together for make change. I believe change, like Mahatma Gandhi said, be the change that you want to see. And so if you want to start seeing the young people in your community be better, do better, aspire to live better, take on the challenge, 2 or 3 of them.
Wow. And so you're saying within our own network, our own family, our own reach, nieces, nephews, grandkids, kids, that we can be disruptors. And you also say, you've taught us 2 things already. You taught us about disrupting and disruptors, and you described disruptors to people in your life. You also told us faith is what we hear, right? So if I'm repetitive in telling a young person over and over about the good that's in them and lead them to that, is that sort of the faith that they begin to grasp, as you did when your sergeant came to you and offered to and said he could help you do 2 things, be a great soldier and to enter college? Is that sort of what we have to do, is begin to be positive influence of our children and reinforce positive influences in their life?
Well, this is scientifically proven, and this is spiritually proven. So there's a spiritual principle that says, call those things that be not as though there were. On the scientific side, it says for every negative thing a person hears, they need to hear a positive affirmation to cancel that out. So even with my kids and with our children, What are you constantly saying? Are you saying that boy is nothing but a knucklehead? That boy ain't gonna be nothing like his father. That boy is nothing but that girl just boom. What are we saying? Are we speaking life? Because there's another principle that says life and death is in the power of the tongue. So our tongue has the ability to speak life, or it has the ability to speak death. And so we see this scientifically. They tell you if you take a plant and you speak to that plant positively, that plant will begin to grow. It will begin to mature. But if you talk to that plant negative, so if this is true of a plant, how much more true is it for a child? How much more true is it for a child if we're speaking positivity? If you tell that child, I see you doing amazing things. I see you going far in life. I see you being a great contributor to society. I see. Remember, we're shaping vision again, because without a vision, people perish. So our words begin to shape vision in people. And when people begin to have a vision, that shapes their belief. When people have a belief, that shapes their actions. When people have actions, they now have habits. And when people have habits, they have results. Wow. And so it goes all the way back to your results are all the root and the stem, right, of the words that you're constantly not only hearing, but the words that you're constantly speaking to yourself and over yourself. See, Mike, you can tell me, Will, you're a dummy. That has potential to destroy me if I believe it and I start repeating it to myself. Oh, Mike says I'm a dummy. I saw Mike on TV. He must know what he's talking about. If he thinks I'm a dummy, I must be a dummy. But if I say, wait a minute, Mike doesn't know me. He doesn't know the potential I have. He doesn't know the plan that God has for me. He must be mistaken to think I'm not going to be something. I'm going to be everything that God designed me to be. But see, if that person doesn't have that in their toolbox to refute that, then they'll take what Mike says and begin to repeat what Mike says, and that becomes their reality.
Wow. You know, that's powerful that we have that type of control over particularly our young people and don't really realize it. And we need this affirmation, Dr. Will, because, you know, we're halfway through the hour and we're going to do a halfway break and talk about the Black USA Network. Then we're going to come back because we could spend 2 hours with Dr. Will, who's written over 50 books and wants to talk about your genius and talk about how your perception of that apple is so you can get the best out of you, whether you're 18 or 70. Dr. Will has something for you. If you have a book in your head, and I think that he believes we all do, how do you get that book out? You know, Dr. Will has done all the work scientifically from what I hear, and we just need to tune in and support him in his business and his platform, and you'll see and hear more about that so you can get some of his self-help guides. But BlackUSA.News Network is seen in multitude of cities across this country: Oakland, New York, Florida, Baltimore, Maryland, and we have shows 7 days a week, including 60 Minutes in Black America. Earlier today, we had the show with Martin Mitchell, Politics Over People. Yesterday, Quandra Gaines, who you saw in the chat, has Community Conversation, Political Cipher on Wednesdays. Chap and Quita have on Monday Sacred Spaces, the Troy Rollins shows out of California with Troy Rollins every day at noon. And our media mogul, Donnie Glover, every day, Monday through Friday, with the Donnie Glover Show, 9 a.m. Eastern Time. And the reason that we have this network is so that we can compare notes and have conversations like we're having tonight across countries, across cities that people look like us. And we can comparatively speak and uplift and help each other. And tonight we're talking to Dr. Will Moreland, author, motivational speaker, about how we can get better wherever we are in life today. So, Dr. Will, I want to be a genius, man. I believe that there's some genius in me. How do I recognize that? You have written books about getting the genius out of us. And I want to talk about a couple of those 50 books that you've authored, right? And I'm still trying to get one out of me. But how do I recognize the genius in me? And do people think that that's conceited or arrogant for me to think that I'm a genius? How do we look at the positive aspects of that?
It's a great question. So when I originally started doing this work around this whole concept that each of us have genius potential on the inside of us, and that's the book that I wrote, Genius Potential, I started doing this research, and what I found out, Mike, was literally each and every one of us do have genius on the inside of us. And when you break down the word and understand the word genius, it simply means a natural proclivity, something that you can naturally do. A lot of times, Mike, what happens is we understand about Aristotle, and we understand about Plato, and we understand about Socrates, and we understand about Van Gogh, and we understand about Mozart. We usually look at those external, what I call external geniuses. Like if someone can play the piano, if someone can play the saxophone, if someone can do art. We look at that and we say, oh, they're genius. If they're doing it at the age of 3, 4 years old, and the parent says they never had lessons, they just walked by the piano one day and they were able to start playing. Well, each of us have that. Each of us have that. When I was growing up, I would always mimic the pastors that I saw. And I would always get in trouble at school because they would say, Miss Gray, Will is a pleasure to have in class. He just talks too much. He just talks too much. Well, what they didn't realize, see, if I was a kid who played the piano, they would put me in the school recital. If I was a kid who sang, they would put me in the talent show. But because I was the kid who talked, and they didn't understand that this was my genius, that this was my gifting, that this is what I was called to do, I got punished for it. And that's what happens, especially here in America, in our educational system, if you don't fit into this academic box. So let's just say a person who is genius at doing hair. Let's say a young man is a barber and he's genius. Well, he's not going to be able to realize that genius until he's out of our educational system. But for 12 years, 16 years, he's going to have to be compressed to learn about math, learn about science, learn about history, learn about all this other stuff that has nothing to do with his genius. Once again, think about if Mozart's parents told him, get off of that piano, go outside and play. Get off that piano and go lay some bricks. Get off that piano and go do something else. He wouldn't have been able to compose the way he composed. And so it wasn't until after I got out of school, after I joined the military, after I started reading personal development books, I realized that all along throughout all of my life, that my gifting was to speak, that my gifting was to communicate.
And now, people were telling you to shut up. They were saying you talk too much, and your gift is what you're giving is in your ability to motivate and positive energy that comes from your lips.
So, Mike, listen to this. I know you heard this before. People say talk is cheap, right? So in my mind, in my wiring, they kept saying talk is cheap, talk is cheap. But I found out in my career, in my life, that talk is not cheap. I get paid hundreds of thousands of dollars to talk. So talk is not cheap.
Times in 50 different countries and in 39 of the 50 contiguous U.S. states, you have been paid to speak because you wouldn't allow people to shut you up, man, from your genius.
And so everybody has this, right? Let's say your gift is humor, but growing up, they called you what? The class clown. So you didn't get an opportunity. You would probably get in trouble like me and get sent to the principal's office because you're making everybody laugh. But look at a Kevin Hart, look at a Eddie Murphy, look at all of these individuals that are using that gift of laughter. Let's just say you're an individual that you want to write notes to people. Well, look at what happened with Hallmark. That's all a card is. They're writing notes to people. That's their genius. to write feel-good notes to people. But see, that's not something you would learn in school. Somebody would never tell you to start a card company. But here he is starting this card company, and now his name was Mr. Hall, and that's how we get Hall. He says, I want to make a mark in the world. So now we have Hall Mark. That is a $1 billion company. Now it's a TV publication, all because he realized and tapped into his genius. And so this is something that each and every one of us have on the inside of us. You may be an event planner. See, I think about all these areas. Mr. Fred, who is the founder of FedEx, when he took his idea to his college professor gave him an F for that business idea. What do you mean packages can get from Phoenix to Maryland in one day? What do you mean? That's impossible. I think about a Roger Bannister, who was the Olympic runner. When everybody in the world said it's impossible to run the mile in under 4 minutes, your heart would explode. He said, no, I think running is my genius, and I'm going to maximize my potential, and I'm going to maximize my genius. And he ran the mile in under 4 minutes. And ever since that day, Mike, somebody on this planet has run the mile in under 4 minutes simply because Roger Bannister said it was possible.
Let me ask you, is it too late for our viewers at 60 or 70 or 50 to realize their genius? How do you recognize your genius? Is it your passion and what it is that you love to do? And how do you unlock it, Dr. Will? How do we inspire and motivate and ensure that people understand it's never too late? Because I'm one that don't believe it's ever too late to unlock your genius. But then what do we do about it?
Man, that's fantastic. And so once again, I would challenge everybody listening to me, go back over your life. What is that thing that you can naturally do better than anybody, that you are excited about doing? That if I woke you up at 3 o'clock in the morning, you could do it. Mike, if you woke me up at 3 o'clock in the morning and said, Dr. Will, we need to do an interview, I would be able to do it, because that's what, going back to the apple, that's what I naturally do. So I just flow. And so for those of you that are listening to me, go back. What is that thing? Because what happens as an adult, we forget to use our imagination. We stop dreaming. We stop believing. People start saying, grow up. You're too old for that now. Get serious in life. That's what they tell us, right? Get serious in life. But I have people, I'll tell you, one gentleman inside of our Speakers Academy, Willie, he's 77 years old, and he's one of the top speakers in the United States. We have another speaker, Caden. Caden is 12 years old. Caden is earning $10,000 a month as a speaker. So you're never too young and you're never too old to release your genius, because that's what you were designed for. And this is why I love talking about genius, because genius doesn't have any expiration. See, if I would have played sports, LeBron James is now, I think, 38. They're telling him he's too old to play basketball now. They're saying it's time for, at 38 years, think about this, Mike, at 38 years old. So this is how I know that playing basketball is not his genius. It's a skill that he has, but it's not his genius. He's probably haven't tapped into his genius yet, because your genius doesn't have an expiration. Your genius is what you're going to do until the day that you die. See, I don't know how I'm going to be doing this in 30 years. I don't know if it's going to be a Facebook Live. I don't know if it's going to be StreamYard. I don't know if it's going to be YouTube, but this is what I'm going to be doing, communicating to people, sharing to them the tools and the skills and the solutions to help them live their better life. I don't know what technology we're going to be using, but I know this is what I'm going to be doing. So for those of you listening to me, tap into that. Tap into, say, you know what? What is it, the thing that I love to do the most? And don't worry about initially getting paid for it. Just identify it. What is the thing that I love? Do I love being an event planner? Do I love making people smile? What is it, the thing that I love to do? Maybe it's telling stories. Maybe it's being a keynote speaker. I don't know what it is, but identify what that thing is that you love. And then the second thing is, you now find opportunities to do it. Find opportunities to do it. Let's just talk about the example of a speaker. If you say, you know what, I want to be a speaker, find examples, find opportunities to just do it. Don't worry about getting paid. Just find an opportunity. If you say you're a speaker, then speak. Grab your phone, set it up, go live on Facebook, go live on YouTube, go live on Instagram. If you have a story, if you have some knowledge that you want to share, find the opportunity to share it.
It's amazing. It's amazing what you're saying, Dr. Will. I hate to interrupt you, but I want to promote you. And I want to make sure that people understand that your availability to them, and I hope the production team can put up there how they can tap into your resources on Amazon. And they are not costly. This guy has written, has read, has made available to us his gift of giving to us and motivating us. Go on Amazon, take a look at it. I saw the day where one of his books was available absolutely free, man. Another one was 99 cents. Whatever it was, for whatever reason it was, that price. Maybe it's because it needs to be available for us because there's no longer any excuses. I want to be Dr. Will. I want to take Lester Holt's place, man. That is what I'm tapping into, and I'm serious about it. You know what I'm saying? And here I am at this stage in life. And as you mentioned, what is it that we love to do? And is talking our gift, and what is our gift that we can practice at? And I want to acknowledge a couple of people that I've seen. As I said, we've never done that on this platform before. David Murphy, the Black Unity newspaper, okay? He's in the room, and he's looking. Leroy Lewis. Hey, Leroy. Kathy Evans, one of our guest hosts. There's a multitude of people. Oren down in Houston, Texas. There's a multiple of people on here listening. Leon Thomas of the Leon Thomas Group, who, as we spoke to those young people I mentioned earlier, there's a lot of people that have gifts in our world. And what you mentioned, that Reginald Lewis, inspired and motivated by his profound description, why should white people have all the fun? Or however he described it, you know, what about in our communities, the ability and capacity to be the best we can be? And I saw a question, Dr. Will, in there. What do we need in our toolbox? What you had in your toolbox, in my estimation, was the power of example of your life and changing it to motivate me at where I'm at in life to go up and take a look at what you have studied and what you have taught me, that apple that you described at the top was me, and I had not tapped into that apple or me into the depth of what it is that I could produce. So, Dr. Will, I want to write a book. I want to write a book now. I'm inspired from you to write a book. You've written 50, and you talk about people getting their message out of their head into the pen and into a book. How difficult is that? And is it something that I can do as an ordinary person?
Yeah. And so when we talk about that, if we think about anybody that we consider to be extraordinary, we have to always remember that's an ordinary person that just took action. That's what extraordinary persons are. It's individuals that are ordinary that just took action. And so I always use the illustration. If you're on the side of the road and you're in your car and your car has run out of gas or whatever the thing may be, as long as you sit in your car, other cars will just keep passing by. They'll just keep passing by, keep passing by. And as you're in your car, you may start to get frustrated and you might say, no one's helping me. Look at all these rude people. People aren't kind. People don't care about people anymore. Nobody will support you. And I always challenge people. I say, I promise you, if you get out that car and you begin to push your car, other people will begin to see your effort and your actions. See, as long as you were sitting in the car, they didn't know why you were sitting in the car. Were you sitting in the car to take a nap? Were you sitting in the car to use the phone? Were you sitting in the car for whatever reason? But when they see the action that you're taking, so whatever it is that you want to do, take that first action. If it's to write a book, don't worry about how do I format a book? How do I publish a book? How do I create a cover for a book? The first thing you need to do is start writing the book. Just open up your laptop, if you're old school, take out a piece of paper and start writing. And then as you begin to talk with people, hey, Will, what have you been up to? I'm working on this book. I'm working. Remember, our words are life and death. I'm working on this book. I'm working on this book. I promise you, I don't know how it actually happens, Mike, but this is how the universe begins to conspire to work with you. Have you ever told somebody, hey, I'm looking to get a car. If you know anybody selling a car, let me know. Well, what did you just do? You just put into the universe your expectation. So now when someone's talking to me and they say, hey, I'm thinking about selling my car, I remember, oh, Mike told me he's looking for a car. I need to connect these two people together. So as you begin to write your book, and now people are saying, what have you been up to? And you say, hey, I'm writing a book. They say, wait a minute. I know a Dr. Will who has a book writing program. Maybe you should check it out. Wait, I know a Dr. Leroy who wrote a book. Let me connect you. See, if you're just thinking about it, I can't read minds. I don't know what's going on in your mind. I've been thinking about writing a book for a year. I've been thinking about writing a book for 10 years. I don't know what's in your mind until you begin to communicate it and take action. That's where all the magic happens, is when you begin to take action. People ask me all the time, Dr. Will, how have you written 50 books? Simple. I wrote them. I took action. I took action. You're listening to an individual that grew up with a speech impediment. You're looking at an individual who has dyslexia. You're looking at an individual that can't type more than 20 words a minute. You're looking at an individual that would have all the reasons not to, but I only needed one reason to do it. And the reason that I needed was because it's possible. That's the only reason that I needed. It's possible. And once I believed that it was possible, I just had to do my part. And let me tell you, I'll share this with you, Mike. When I started writing books, I didn't know anything about book publishing. I didn't know anything about formatting. I didn't know anything about getting the book out there. But when I started pushing the car down the street, I remember the first cover that I had. It was a cover that I made in PowerPoint. And I was promoting that cover. And somebody hits me in the inbox. And they say, Dr. Will, can I ask you something? I said, sure. They said, who did your cover for your book? And I said, well, I did it. They said, can I be honest with you? I said, sure. They said, that cover is horrible. Do you mind if I do a cover for you? Because I'm a graphic designer. I said, let the Lord use you. This individual ended up doing my next 15 covers. But see, as long as it was in my head, and as long as I was thinking about it, and as long as I didn't take action on it, the help didn't show up. See, a lot of times, Mike, we want all the help to show up on this side. No, the help doesn't show up until you take the action.
So we have to share our hopes, our dreams, and allow people to assist us in that goal. And it also appears that it holds us accountable when we do share for seeing it through. Do you agree with that, Dr. Will?
Man, see, there's a thought out there, right? There's always two sides to every coin, right? There's some people who say, don't share your dreams, don't share it with nobody, because they'll steal it, they'll talk bad about it. No, you share your dream, you talk about your dream. Here's the caveat. Be careful who you take advice from. Be careful who you take feedback from. See, the problem is not in sharing it. The problem is, remember, faith comes by hearing. The problem is who we choose to listen to. So I share my dreams all the time. I share my aspirations all the time. But here's the thing. I don't take advice from just anybody. I don't take feedback from just anybody.
Let me ask you, Dr. Will, because we're really getting to our rapid fire session, man, because we could go another hour. We've got like 6 minutes left, man.
All right, man.
I got like 4 or 5 rapid fire questions, and we want to make sure that we promote, because it seems as though people are inspired to go get assistance from you, and you have credibility and the ability to help people out there, and it's very cost effective. I went and saw it myself, you guys. So we're going to go to www.moreland.com morelandtraining.com, www.morelandtraining.com. That's where you get all of Dr. Will's information on his site. Dr. Will, what does success look like from your eyes when you look out at someone else? How do you judge success? Something tells me that you don't look at the Bentley in the driveway and you don't look at dining at Club 21 and all that stuff. How do you see success in an individual, Dr. Will?
Yeah, success for me is personal, and it's personal for everybody, and simply straightforward. It's doing what makes you happy. That's success. It's doing what makes you happy. That's it in a nutshell. When you wake up in the morning, are you doing what makes you happy? Are you doing it with who makes you happy? Are you surrounded by individuals? Because at the end of the day, the Bentley, the house, the clothes, the cars, that's not who you want surrounded around your deathbed. You want people.
Wow. We don't want around our deathbed. So let's transition into in our circle, in our network. What does your circle look like in terms of support, Dr. Will? Is it people that inspire you, people that you're happy being around? I mean, because obviously you changed your circle from Compton, and now your circle looks tremendously different. What should our circle look like, and how do we evaluate it?
So I have two circles. So I have a circle of very close friends that I've been friends with almost 25 years, and I keep them as friends. They're friends. We're family. We're friends. But then I have another circle of business associates that aspire me and push me and promote me. And so I keep those two groups separate. And so I have one group, they're just family and friends. And a lot of times we as individuals, we want to try to turn our family and friends into clients, and we want to try to turn them into customers. And then we get upset and say people don't support us and all that type of stuff. No, your wife, your spouse, your husband, they didn't sign up to be your client. They didn't sign up to be your customer. Your friends didn't sign up for that. It's nice if they support you, but you don't need it. It's 8 billion other people in this world looking to help you, support you, and to move your mission forward. So then I have mentors and I have coaches that I invest in, that when I want to talk business and I want to talk all those things about success, I talk to them about it.
Wow, Dr. Will, what is your favorite of the 50 books? What do you see as the most valuable book? If you had to say to someone, you get this book. If this is the only book you can afford, get this book of mine. What is that?
Wow, Mike, you're asking me to pick one of my kids as my favorite, right?
Right, man. Give me one of your kids, man. The best.
So if I would suggest to anybody right now, it would be called a book called Copycat Millionaire. Copycat Millionaire. And the reason why the reason why I select that one is because I had the opportunity to interview 150 millionaire and billionaires, and I pulled out the best lessons that they taught me. They taught me 21 laws of building wealth. And I think that's an area where all of us can benefit from. Just learning how to think about money, learning how to think about generational wealth. So Copycat Millionaire, get that book. It's a real simple read, but the principles in it, the 21 principles in it, will help shape your mind and help shape your mentality toward money.
Copycat Millionaire, Dr. Will said, get that simple read book. And we got one more question for you, Dr. Will, before we let you go, before we're done with this hour. Tell me how we go into the new year, Dr. Will. How do we go into, everyone always goes into a new year making these promises to themselves. They're going to stop doing this. They're going to stop doing that. They're going to start doing this and that. Approach the new year, man. Tell us how.
I've been talking to audiences literally all around the world and this last 6 months, and the one message that I've been telling everybody about this new year, about 2023, I know the last 2 years we've faced this pandemic, but we need to go into 2023 with a sense of urgency. A sense of urgency. For those of you that I've been seeing typing in the chat, I want to write a book, I want to start a business, I want to do this, I want to go into this year like this is the last year that you have to make that happen. Now, this is not about being morbid, but this is about us realizing we don't have the time that we think we have. Now, I know we all want to live into 80, into 90, into 100, but I want us to go into this new year with a sense of urgency. I want you to go in here with a sense of commitment. 2023 is the year that I'm going to get it done. 2023, no matter what happens, no matter what comes, I'm going to get it done. December the 31st, 2023, I'm going to be able to look back over this year and say, you know what? I did what I said I was going to do January 1st. I got it done. I wrote the book. I started the company. I went back to school. I bettered my relationships. I got out of debt. Whatever you've been saying you were going to do, make 2023 the year that you don't put it off. Make 2023 the year that you go into it with a sense of urgency.
Dr. Will, I am coming out to Mecca to visit you. The new Mecca for me is Phoenix, Arizona. You know, had I known 2 years ago when I was out there, I'm coming to Mecca to see you, man, in next quarter. Hopefully you'll be there. This has been an awe-inspiring show. I see from the comments in the chat, it's been awe-inspiring. Copycat Millionaire, www.morelandtraining.com. Go take a look at the motivational, inspirational, phenomenal Dr. Will Moreland. Thank you so much. We got to get you back on, Dr. Will. It's been absolutely awesome. You're watching another edition of 60 Minutes in Black America with Mike Haney. It's been an outstanding show. We look forward to seeing you next week. Following this show, Data Mall Sis with Erica Austin Buck tomorrow morning. The Donnie Glover Show at 9 a.m. Followed in the evening by Chaplain Laquita with Spaces, right? Sacred Spaces. It's been a great show. Good night. Have a great week. Thank you so much for tuning in.